Can you go 2 or 3 hours at night without being on your phone? Because if you can't, something is going to give. And what usually will give are the relationships. If we want relationships to grow, we've got to learn how to be present. Hey, everybody, welcome to Becoming One. I'm Dr. Matt, your coach, your guide on the side, and so excited today to be talking about 4 questions to ask yourself to see if you're bringing the best you to your most important relationships in your life. And remember, with Becoming One, whenever we talk about relationship stuff, we're not just talking about your relationship with your marriage or your partner, or your boyfriend or your girlfriend. We're talking about all the relationships you have, including, by the way, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with God, your higher power, also your relationship with your friends and family, those coworkers of yours, and your partner. So I believe these principles are so universal that they actually would apply to making sure you're bringing the best you to all of those different relationships. And that's what we're going to be going through. And so as we go through each of the questions, I just want you to be doing a little internal investigation on yourself and figuring out, do I possess this ability? Is it worth going after? Is it something that I do seek to bring to my relationships? The powerful thing about each one of these areas we're going to cover is that each one is validated academically by the research that they attract people, they keep people tighter in a relationship, they produce more happiness in our life and in our relationships. So let's jump into the list right now. The very first thing to be able to bring your best self in your relationships is, do you have an open and teachable heart? Okay. To me, are you teachable? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to adapt? Are you willing to grow in your relationship with the people that you say matter most to you? If we don't have a growth mindset, as Carol Dweck calls it, then we usually will have more of what's called a fixed mindset. And the fixed mindset is just the simple idea that you are what you are. You're either good at it or you're not. When you hear a lot of people talk about their relationships, a lot of times they think their relationships are fixed because, we married each other. We didn't know each other very well, and we were too young when we got married. So it is what it is, and it's just not ideal. The problem with that thought is that it doesn't allow you to be open and teachable. Do you possess and bring to the relationship an open, teachable heart? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to adjust? Are you willing to get better and to grow and to develop? Anytime I hear a person say, I shouldn't have to change, you should just love me for who I am. Well, okay, maybe, but you better grow, right? You need to develop. None of us are what we were when we were 20. None of us are what we were when we were 30. Hopefully, we're all getting better and we're all growing and truly improving. The ability to grow and see that each moment in your life is a developmental opportunity to learn how to do something better is the number one driver of hope in a relationship. If your relationship is losing hope, if you feel like you're not being driven anymore and believing in this thing and having this hope that it can become something powerful and amazing, it might be because you've ceased learning. You've ceased growing. And many of us stop learning and growing because we don't like the pressure it causes, right? We don't like the criticism. We don't like the attacks on us. So instead, we run away from growing. A lot of us, I believe, honestly, just in our own school system, we've kind of been trained to quit growing. We've been trained to quit learning. And in fact, just think about it in your own life. How many books have you read about improving marriage and communication in your life? How many have you read in the last few years? What have you learned about yourself to make you better, to make you stronger as we kind of go through this relationship? Instead of assuming that I just have to automatically know everything about you and we are what we married and that's it, it's all set in stone, you can grow, you can develop, because the truth about all relationships is they're going to be in flux, right? I had no idea who I was until I got married. And then when I got married, I learned more and more who I was in relation to my partner. Then you add to that, a few kids come along. 2, 3 kids come along, and all of a sudden you learn more who you are. And then you realize you get, more success at work, and life starts to grow. And then you got to handle more challenges and bigger opportunities. And then the community comes and they want a piece of you and they want to start stretching you a little bit more. In reality, none of us are going to get through life without some serious learning, growing, and developing. So here are some questions you can ask to see if you really are open to feedback and learning and growing. Question number 1, are you open to feedback, new things, change, and improvement? Do you actually ask for feedback from your partner? Or are you running and you do not want to open that can of worms, right? Do you ask for feedback about your performance? Do you actively seek to be better at relating with those around you? Great questions to be asking yourself. Another question you can ask is, are you seen by those around you as easily instructed? Or are you more seen as a hard-headed mule? How do the people around you feel about giving you feedback? Do you notice that you get feedback? Because if you get feedback, it might be a sign that you show you're open to it. But if you never get feedback, it might be a sign that you created a culture around you that's obviously not open to it. Here's another fun question to just think through. When things don't go perfect or ideal in your relationship, do you and your partner sit down and talk about it and figure out how we could do it better next time? Right? If we didn't plan very well through the holidays, did you guys sit down after and figure out how you could do it better? There is power in all of our relationships when you are a person that is open and willing to learn, and when you teach the people around you that you're open and willing to learn. It creates a sense of humility in yourself. It also can start to tear down the need to be perfect. Once you start instituting a learning and growing and development approach to our life and our relationships, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to continually improve. Okay, now let's move to question number 2 that we need to ask to make sure that we're becoming the ideal kind of person we want to be in all of our relationships. Question number 2 is, can you safely attach with others without fighting, flighting, freezing, or pleasing? Can you safely connect in and attach to others without all of these other survival techniques that we tend to pick up? Now remember, about 60% of us have what are called attachment issues. Basically, an attachment issue is just simply the idea that we don't necessarily feel lovable, we don't feel capable in our relationships, we don't feel that we belong, or we don't feel safe in the relationship. And it doesn't always apply to the fact that I don't feel safe with you today. It might be that I didn't feel safe as a kid in my relationships. I didn't feel capable as a child to be able to handle all the difficult stuff I needed to handle. Or I didn't feel like I belonged, maybe because my family moved around so much that I always had to kind of try to always fit in, and I had to become a fighter who wanted to fit in all the time, right? So these attachment issues, we know they impact our relationships. And if you want to be really good at becoming the real you, in your life and in the relationships with the people you care about the most, you've got to be able to safely attach without turning on survival. When we feel vulnerable in our relationships, our survival instinct kicks in, right? Our fight or flight instinct kicks in. And then what we learn to do is fight for our love and flight when we don't feel like we're smart or capable. We run away from opportunities to learn more, to grow more. Or we freeze because we don't know what to do when we don't belong. Or we try to become big pleasers and we please everybody just to know and make sure that we're going to be safe. So everybody needs to feel lovable, capable, belonging, and safe. Do you? In your most important relationships, do you feel lovable? Do you feel like, without having to push all of the different stresses and fight or flight survival instances and techniques, do you feel like you're loved? When you were growing up, did you feel loved while you were being parented? Did you feel loved in elementary school? Did you feel loved in high school? Now, if somewhere in there you didn't feel loved, we don't need to go explore that deeply per se. What we could do is just recognize, I didn't feel it in grade school because of that bully. Now, what did you learn to do because of that? Did you become a fighter, a flighter, a freezer, or a pleaser? Because whichever method you use to try to actually know you're lovable, guess what? That's the method that you probably are going to use in your relationships later on. If you don't feel like you're loved by your spouse because she didn't return the affection, do you then turn on your fight and start fighting her? Or do you run away and hide and ignore her? Or do you just freeze and not know what to do? Or do you just try to please her again and see if she'll love you tonight? What do you do? Because this pattern is a pattern that we're going to carry into our relationships. And so if you want truly healthy long-term relationships, we all need to deal with our own attachment patterns. Make sense? So here are the 4 areas, and I'm going to ask you questions about these 4 areas, and you just see if you had these needs met while you were growing up or throughout your life, or even just in your relationship with your partner. Do you feel lovable with your partner? Do you feel like you're connected? Do you feel like you're important to them? Do you feel like without having to do something, without having to get grades, did you feel loved growing up? Without having to be an awesome athlete, did you feel loved? Every human being needs to know they're lovable without any conditions attached, right? Love should just be there whether we get a good grade or not. The second question is, did you feel like you're capable? Did you grow up having this sense that you can figure stuff out? You may not know everything because you're in 4th grade, but you're confident you can learn. Did you feel capable with your friends? Did you feel capable in your schoolwork and in your classes? When you got to high school, did you feel capable about being able to make it through high school and get through the systems of the school? Did you go to college? Did you go do other service? And did you feel capable as a human being? Because if you felt capable, guess what happens? People that feel capable can relax their grip and they can be a different kind of person in the relationship. The third set of questions we're going to ask is, did you belong? Did you feel like you fit in? Did you feel like you were part of the group? Did you feel like in your family you belonged? Did you feel like you belonged in elementary school? Did you belong in high school? Did you belong in your marriage today? Do you belong in your family unit? If you feel like you belong, it changes the game for all of us, because then we can relax our fight or flight and just be normal, right? If we're not sure if we belong, then we might start wondering why we have to do this and where are you going and why are you doing it that way? We might fight with each other a little bit more. We might complain more about how you never invite me in. I've myself felt really insecure in certain social situations, and I could feel my belonging kick up. And do I really belong with this group of people? This group of people are so educated, they're so smart. And I wasn't quite sure I fit in, and I wasn't quite sure if I belonged. So do you feel like you belong? And the last question is, do you feel safe? Safe physically, safe socially, safe emotionally, safe financially? Do you feel safe? Do you feel safe with the people around you? Do you feel safe with the friends that you've got? And that might just be, yeah, you're safe physically. You won't be harmed, but socially they embarrass you, and that makes things hard. When those needs of lovable, capable, belonging, and safe are not met, we start to get a little more fight or flight on board. And then what we generally pick is a tendency to take people on, or you don't even have to fight them physically. You're just going to fight to constantly prove you're enough. Or you're going to run when you're not enough. So you avoid a lot of stuff. A lot of kids have quit school as they're flighting and running away because they don't belong, right? They don't belong with a team. They don't belong with their friends, or they're being bullied. Or another thing they might do is they freeze and they just don't perform well. I've seen kids get up to bat, and because they felt unsafe socially, people were yelling like, swing the bat, that they got so nervous they couldn't swing the bat. They literally just froze. And what's weird is all they needed was a coach or somebody to go out there, sit by him, talk to him, and build him up so that they didn't have to freeze anymore and they could find another way to get through the situation. The power of all of these scenarios is we've got to belong, because if not, we're also going to try to please. And when we please each other, what we might end up doing is, I'm not freezing and I'm not fighting you and I'm not running from you. I'm just going to please, and I'm going to lose myself and give everything to you. Whatever you want, I'll do, right? I'll lose my identity. I won't say no where I should say no. And I'm going to try to please you into loving me and caring for me and being there for me. And so as we're talking about your attachment and do you feel lovable, capable, belonging, and safe, it's also, remember, it's just as important to be looking at the people that you love and the people that you care for and find out, how do they feel? Do they feel like they're lovable? Do they feel like they're capable? Do your kids feel like they belong? Does your spouse feel safe with you? So we want to always be making sure not just how we're doing in these conversations and are we fighting, flighting, freezing, or pleasing, but also how are they doing and what are they feeling? Here are some questions you can ask yourself to kind of get a feeling for how they see that you're doing. For example, do people around you complain that you are too hard to please? And what are their complaints? Start paying attention to what they are complaining out about and see if that has anything to do with lovable, capable, belonging, and safe. Do people say that you just don't seem to care? And what are they seeing and talking about when they say that? And the third question you can ask is, do you know that you distance yourself from those who do not do what you want them to do? Or do you draw closer to those people who seem to be distancing? How do you approach them, and how do they draw close to you? If you're harsh on them, do they pull away and run away? Because if they do, that's a sign they don't feel lovable, capable, belonging, and safe. Or do they seem to try to constantly be trying to please you? Do they fight more with you? Do they freeze more with you? Or do they run away from you? Those are the things we want to be looking at in all of our relationships, not just how it's going with you and what you do. Try to start noticing with the people you care about, what they're doing with you. So if we want our relationships to be healthier and to make it through the test of time, we've got to be able to safely attach with others without fighting, flighting, freezing, or pleasing. So if you're struggling with any of these questions, then it's time to start working on some of your attachment issues and some of your attachment responses, right? And so one powerful way to do that, obviously, is getting into our program, Becoming One, where we talk about this in our live calls every single week, and we help create the tools and the solutions to help you overcome your history of attachment. Now, let's get into question number 3. If we want to become our best, ideal, true self in our relationships. Question number 3 is simply, can you manage your focus by being truly present in the moment and attending to your relationships? Are you really good with your attention? Can you focus? Today, the research is clear. Our ability to focus is dropping. Our ability to focus our attention on what matters most is waning. It's sliding. It's decreasing. And part of that is because we have so much abundance of choice for what we can do with our attention every single day that it's starting to distract us. And the number one thing it's killing are the relationships in our life. Have you ever been on your phone and you're talking to your kids, but you're not paying attention to the kid because you have to pay attention to the phone? Children in research today have been showing and claiming that thought of you as a parent being distracted from them is one of the greatest things that's impacting them negatively. Their inability to get your attention. And that's, if you think about it, that's crazy, right? Because you love these kids more than anything. And yet you're busy and you're taking the call. And because you have the phone, you now can use the phone. And a lot of us are just seriously piling on more and more stuff in our lives, more podcasts, more activities, more texts that we can send while we're driving, for heaven's sakes. Our attention is being stretched to the limit. And one of the dilemmas or problems that comes from stretching your attention so far is you start to feel more and more anxiety. So some things you can be thinking about is, do you feel more anxious in your life? Can you sit down in a conversation with your family and focus? Isn't it crazy that we can drive a car 80, 90 miles an hour, right? Heading down the freeway, and we will still be checking our text. You're flying at 90 miles an hour on a freeway, and you're willing to, listen or try to find the song that you want to listen to, or you have to be listening to the podcast. That distractibility is seriously impacting us. We know it's not even just cell phones anymore. It's also news, it's social media, however you get yours. But news and social media are also filling up the void of our mind and our time. And so can you bring focus and attention to your most important relationships? Can you take your phone and turn it off and set it aside? Can you go 2 or 3 hours at night, 7 to 10, let's say, without being on your phone? Because if you can't, something is going to give, right? And what usually will give are the relationships. And most relationships aren't going to just be as reactive to you until they start to be broken, right? Your phone is always reacting, right? All of a sudden, the phone will ring because somebody's intervening and calling you. And that interruption, you react to it and you take the call. It's seemingly urgent because it's ringing. And a lot of us have learned to fight our lives not by focusing on the important all of the time, but mostly most of us are fighting on the urgent. And sometimes in life, things are urgent and important, which is where we actually do the important things with our kids in an urgent manner, and we help them get their science project done the night before. And that took up the whole night, and that was a very urgent but important thing to do with them. And then once we're done doing all the urgent and important things, then we go down and start doing all the urgent and unimportant things. We have to answer those text messages at night because we didn't have time to answer them at work today. So now we're doing other urgent work that could probably be done the next day, but we don't even question it. At some point, each and every one of us, if we want relationships to grow, we've got to learn how to be present. We've got to learn how to sit in the now and listen to the people that are in our lives. We've got to learn to turn and give them our full attention and use our eyes to pick up more information about them and be present. So the simple questions for you are, can you do that? Can you give your full attention to your partner or to your children or whatever relationship you're trying to grow? If you're trying to grow your relationship with God or your higher power, can you dial in and give your God the time and the attention you want to give them? Can you meditate every day? Can you go on a walk and turn off your technology so instead of being distracted during the walk, you leave yourself open to have a relationship with a higher power? Or do you have the time and the presence of mind to start actually asking yourself questions about your growth, your development, so that you can strengthen your relationship with yourself? Powerful stuff. Here's a few questions you can also ask to see if you've got the ability to stay and be present in the moment. Do you feel connected to the people you're talking to while you're talking to them? If you're too distracted while you're talking to somebody, you may not feel the connection. You may not feel the emotional transfer between each other. Do you consistently forget what was discussed with the people you talk to? I do. And if I consistently forget what was talked about, it might be because I'm not going deep enough in being present with them. I'm too distracted while we're talking. And what does your mind focus on when you are talking and engaged to those people around you? Start to pay attention to where your mind goes. Where are you giving your attention? One of the things I love to talk about is when I started being a coach 25, 30 years ago almost, what I realized is I used to have to pay for yellow page ads and for advertising. And I always needed the ads to convert to real clients, right? I couldn't be out there wasting money on advertising. But one of the things I've noticed with the advertisers today is I don't always have to convert everything to an immediate sell as long as I can just get your attention, right? So if I can get you to pay attention to what I'm teaching, to what I'm saying, and to what we're talking about, the attention is what everybody out there in the marketing world is looking for. It's not your money they need, it's your attention. So your attention right now is your number one resource as a human being. Where you choose to give your attention will set up in every regard what grows. Whatever you pay attention to grows. And so if you keep getting interrupted by your technology interruptions will grow. If you can learn to put down your technology and interruptions and turn to your family and give your attention and focus there, boom, your attention and focus will grow there. Powerful, right? So simply look at yourself. How effective are you at being present, being mindful, and actually being in the moment with the people in your most important relationships? Okay, and the final and number 4 question that we need to be asking ourselves, if we truly want to be our ideal self in our relationships, is this simple question. Are you a light or a rain cloud in your relationships? What do you bring to your most important relationships? Do you bring a lot of negativity? Do you bring a lot of opposition? Do you tend to point out what's not working? Do you tend to be kind of an Eeyore that just drags down the space? Or do you tend to bring light and positivity and opportunity? Some questions you can ask about this is, do people comment to you about how and why they love being around you? Do they just voluntarily give you all these reasons they love being around you? Do you notice that you can see much more good in other people than bad? And do you bring out the good? Do you point out the good? And do you tend to feel more positive about life than negative? Now, I'm not just talking about being a positive person here, although I am. But the basic principle, and the research is really clear, is that human beings are attracted to positivity. We draw people closer to us when we bring light than when we bring the storm. So what do you bring in your relationships? Are you really good at being able to highlight and see the good, to bring the optimism, to bring the hope, to bring the little bit of good in every situation you see? Because whatever you choose to focus on obviously will grow, right? And it's also where you're going to focus your attention. So if you're a really positive person in the relationships that you're in, you're going to actually start identifying more and more positive, or what we call appreciative, benefits of the relationship. You're going to start keeping a really good score of the good things that are happening, which means overall you're going to find more good, right? Because if you look for good, you're going to find the good. And the more good you accumulate and you're grateful for and you appreciate, the more you're going to feel positive. However, if you do the opposite and you only are looking for the negative things, then guess what? You will invariably find way more negativity. And when you find more negativity, you'll document more negativity. You'll have to fix more negativity. You'll notice everything that's not working, and you start to create this negative momentum, right? It's like putting the brakes on your relationship. So what do you bring to your relationships? Do you bring more light, or do you bring more of a storm? And there's a great relationship story I love about this. That's a fable from Aesop that's called The Wind and the Sun. And the wind and the sun are going to have this great big competition, right? Between two major elements. They're trying to decide which is more powerful, the power of the wind or the power of the sun. And the only way that they can figure this out is they devise this plan where there's some poor guy just down on earth who is wearing a coat. And the basic plan that they've created is whichever element can get the coat off of that guy first wins, right? So the sun defers to the wind. The sun goes behind the clouds and hides away, and the wind comes out and just starts to bear down on that poor guy. And the harder the wind blew, the tighter that man held his coat. And then the cold air was being blown on this man, and the wind kept blowing and blowing, and it knocked him off, and it rolled him across the street, and he just kept tumbling in the wind. But In the entire situation, he never let go of that coat. In fact, he held on to it tighter and tighter until finally the wind couldn't win and gave up. And the wind realized it was now the sun's turn to come out. And the sun came out from behind the clouds and gently, slowly, positively, appreciatively started to influence the poor passerby with its warm rays, until eventually the passerby, of its own accord, ended up removing his coat, and gave the victory to the sun. The light of the sun helps us create a warmer atmosphere with people. It's more attractive. It allows them to be more vulnerable with us. It allows them to trust us more. And it allows them eventually to actually remove some of the things that cover them, that they're hiding under, that they're afraid of, which creates a stronger and stronger relationships, versus the wind that just pounds and forces the negativity that brings the darkness and the colder days and the lonelier nights. So what do you bring to your relationship? Are you a light or are you a storm cloud? And whichever one you choose to bring will inevitably set up how you're going to feel. Whatever your tendency is, positive, negative, or neutral, is going to actually set up how difficult your future conversations are going to be, until eventually you'll be perpetuating and pushing more negativity or more positivity. And interestingly, and what's really powerful, it's up to us to learn. Human beings, because we're attracted to positivity, we tend to actually trust the positive more. Until something goes wrong, you'll notice, and then we very quickly choose to look for the worst things that are possible. If you're somebody who spends a lot of time in the negativity, a simple challenge for you is to start finding 2 or 3 things every day that are good about your life, about your relationships. Write those down at the end of every night. What are 3 good things that happened to your life, and be grateful for them. There is incredible opportunity in our relationships, you guys, when we be the kind of person we want to be. These 4 questions that we've gone over, each and every one of them, are tools for any relationship you have with human beings, right? With other people that are caring and loving and smart. They also work with difficult people who don't feel loved, who don't feel capable, who don't feel that they belong, and who don't feel safe. So let's do one more review of the questions, and I'd love you to go through them. I'd love you to share this with your partner and see if we can't start to create a healthier space for both of us in our relationships. Question number 1, do you have an open and teachable heart? Are you a learner? Are you willing to grow? Question number 2, can you safely attach with others without fighting, flighting, freezing, or pleasing? Are you in a space with others where you can safely reach in, be vulnerable, and connect instead of having to get into your survival instincts? Question number 3, can you manage your focus by being truly present in the moment and attending to your most important relationships? And question number 4, are you a light or a rain cloud in your relationships? What are you bringing to the most important people around you? And remember, as we actually become open, teachable, safe, and attached, focused and intentional, and a positive light, guess what happens? We start to become one, which is the ultimate goal of this podcast, is our ability to connect and become one with other people, become one with ourselves, become one with our God, with our families, with our coworkers. And in so doing, and just living and becoming the one I need to be and bring to my relationships, I can create a community and a world that's more united and more one. So keep listening. Come join our Becoming One program, where we can go deeper, and you can sit in with us as we do real live coaching calls every single week to figure out how we can even dig deeper into our most important relationships. Thanks, everybody.